Hey everyone, this is our weekly check-in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started on what's due for this week. Okay, so we are on week three, the 18th through the 24th, and this week we are going to be watching the Ed puzzles for lessons 6 and 7. We'll be doing the time and motion assignment for lesson 6. We'll have our third quiz, and then we will be doing project 1 outline or midterm project outline. And I'm going to talk through each of those a little bit individually. So if we head over to our modules page, we will go down to module 3. And first things first, we're going to want to go ahead and get those Ed puzzles out of the way. So come all the way down to our Ed puzzle folder and make sure that you watch everything in this folder. There will be just the 2 videos this week, Time and Motion and Principles of Design. And after you've completed those and any built-in questions that are with them, you'll want to, it doesn't really matter where you start at next. If you want to do quiz 3, it's like the other 2 quizzes, just 10 questions, multiple choice. You'll have 20 minutes to take the quiz. And then you'll move on to your next one, whichever one you choose to do. The time and motion assignment, the task here is to watch this TED Talk with Rafiq Anadol, who is a sculpture an installation artist, and he also uses AI in his artwork to create these large scale installations, and one of them being in the Charlotte airport. I know that right now in 2024, there's a lot of like construction and things going on in the airport, so I'm not 100% sure that the piece is still at the airport right now. But if you have seen it before, just like noticed it and not known who made the piece, you'll know this time. So the assignment is to watch the 2 videos here. And then after you have watched those, you'll write a 400 minimum word analysis of his work, answering the questions in the following format. You'll describe Rafiq Anadol's process for creating his media art by answering the following questions. Number 1, what is the difference between actual texture and visual texture, and which one does Anadol employ in his work, and how does he employ it? So that'll carry over a little bit from last week's lessons, actually, when we talked about actual and implied texture. And, you can kind of apply that here as well. Number 2 is how does he use the elements of time and motion in his work? 3 is what are his ideas, inspirations, and or concepts that drive the creation of his work? 4, what is his source material or subject matter in his abstract image representations? And this is going to change a little bit depending on which piece he's working on, but you can just kind of generalize it. Or if you want to talk about a specific artwork, you can do that as well, whatever you want to do. What kind of technology does he use in the creation of his work? And then lastly, what are your thoughts on artificial intelligence and its use for a tool in creating art? Now, usually with this question, I get a few like varied responses. So I just want to clarify what I mean by artificial intelligence before you go on to answer this question. AI is not just like a pen and tablet, like, digitally drawing, where you're still the one creating the artwork. Artificial intelligence artwork is like art that is being generated by AI. It's not something that is produced by humans. The best example I have for this is recently, if you are on TikTok or Instagram or anything like that, there was an application that was getting really popular where you could import like 10 or 12 photos of yourself, and AI would generate like different artworks that were based on your photos. And that is an example of artificial intelligence. So ethically, there's some things that are like not great about that type of technology, because we have artists that are having to actually produce these artworks, and AI is just taking snippets from all of these different things that are online, and combining new images together. But the artists that are creating parts of these drawings or parts of this artwork are not being credited, because there's no laws right now that are, preventing that from happening. So you can just answer these out in a list if you'd like to, but I would like them to be in sentence format. So don't just like, you can, like I said, listing and bulleting points will not receive credit, but if you just answer the questions like one at a time and, in full sentences, it's fine not to make them flow all together. But they do need to be in full sentences, not just like 1 or 2 words. And then it is a direct submission, so you'll just upload this to the assignment there, and there's no comments or anything that you need to do. The second assignment that we've got for this week is the midterm project outline. So if you haven't already, go over to the projects folder and review the project or midterm project instructions there, and you can get a better idea of what this outline is sort of preparing you for. That was for last week, but if you haven't done that already, you can go ahead and do it now. But please make sure your outline is uploaded in module 3. It's not uploaded in the projects folder. This is where your outline is going to go. And we're only completing the outline this week, not the final project. You do not have well, now you do technically have all the information that you need for the final project or for the midterm project, but all you need to turn in for this week is the project outline. I want to review your outlines first before you move ahead into the project itself. So what you're going to do for the outline is choose an artwork for the project. The goal is to establish a basic outline that you will further develop when writing the paper. You must stick with this artwork for the full assignment. So the same artwork that you choose for the outline has to be the one that you stay with for the actual midterm project itself. Please provide the following information below and be as detailed as possible. And remember to think this is for later on. If your research is not thorough, you will just be making more work for yourself later on. And yeah, so the assignment here is you're going to identify your chosen artwork by listing the title, artist name, medium, date, dimensions, and the museum and location underneath the actual photo that you will also provide. So include a high quality image of the artwork. And I've seen this a little bit already this week in some of your previous assignments that I've been grading, but if you're using an artwork, please make sure that you're cropping out any like outside information from the artwork. That is not going to be a high quality image of the artwork if you do not crop out like the other things around it. Like if you've taken a screenshot of the artwork, that's fine, but you need to make sure that you crop out the excess stuff. And then you're going to set it up, and you can set it up just like this if you'd like to. You can see my example I've provided here is setting it up just like that. Your first part is going to be answering some questions about the form. So what are the 3 formal elements in the composition and what are 3 formal elements in the composition and how do you intend to discuss them? Please refer to lessons 3 through 6 for the formal elements and briefly describe how each of these 3 elements are used and point to specific parts in the artwork. 2 is which 2 organizing principles of design do you intend to discuss and how are these 2 principles created from the elements you chose in questions 1? So these 2 are connected very closely. You don't need to just like choose 3 random formal elements and 2 random principles of design. They need to connect because remember our elements are the ingredients and our principles are the recipes. So if you are not, talking about the ingredients, then there's no understanding of how you got to the conclusion of the principle. So make sure that those 2 are interconnected. And again, please refer to lesson 7 on the principles of design. Here's my example for form, and I'll kind of break down these parts one by one. But for form, I've chosen this artwork here, Impression Sunrise. And also don't choose that artwork because I've already talked about it. So you don't need to choose this one. For the elements, I say I plan to discuss how color, texture, and space are used in this piece. Specifically, where I'm pointing to parts in the painting, the use of complementary colors between the blue water and the sky and the orange sun, the implied texture created from the short unblended brushstrokes, and the use of atmospheric perspective created by the color intensity and vertical placement. So I'm like pointing specifically to where I'm seeing those at. And I honestly could be a little bit more specific, like how do I see vertical placement happening? That, the boats are showing me the vertical placement. This one's the closest to me. This the middle, like next farthest away. These boats are, even farther away from me. And I can also tell that by their color intensity being more muted. And then the sun is like the farthest, obviously. And then I say I plan to discuss how emphasis and subordination and rhythm and repetition are used in this artwork. I will discuss how emphasis is created by the use of complementary color scheme and the color intensity shifting from saturated in the sun to dull and muted in the blues in the sky and the water. I will also discuss how the short brushstrokes that create the implied texture of the water give a feeling of rhythm and repetition. And then you go on to content where you ask you to research the artist's intention of the work, reference Who Decides What Art Means video for module 1, or if this is unknown, research how the work was widely received. And then 2, what is your interpretation of the artwork? And are those things different or are they the same? It doesn't, there's no right or wrong answer there, but if the artist intention, what you find about it through your research is different than your interpretation, that might be something to think about. And then lastly, together, how can you see form relating to content, i.e. the monochromatic form creates a feeling of depression and sadness. It's like that's an example of how that would work. So for content and togetherness, I put Monet was part of the Impressionist. The painting was experimental for the time as Impressionism had not yet been established. This was one of the first artworks to work in this style. I plan to further discuss the ideas around Impressionism. Two, my interpretation of the piece is that the viewer is meant to focus on the sun and its vibrancy. We are also to get the feeling that the sun has just risen and the world is still partially in darkness from the night. And then together, how I talk about form and content, the complementary color scheme, use of atmospheric perspective, and texture lead me to better understand that the sun is the emphasis of this painting. The content of the work is about capturing the feeling of the sunrise. Although Monet is using an experimental style for the time, the impressionistic style allows the viewer to better interpret the feeling of the sunrise, which is what Impressionism is all about, is understanding a feeling of something. And I learned that through my research about the piece. So that's what I want you to have. Please make sure that this feels together, like the whole thing feels like it's building on each other. Form will then, you separate form, talk about what the piece looks like, what formal elements and principles you see happening. No interpretation, just formally, use your vocab. What are we looking at here? Two, content, make sure that that's, expressing what the intention was with the piece and what you interpret from the piece. And then together, that form, the way something looks, that affects the content. So a good artist is going to formally make decisions to convey their content. And that's where the together comes in. This artist chose to use this bright saturated sun and these muted blue tones to emphasize the sun, which is what Impressionism, wanted to do, was capture the feeling of this sunrise. I will give you some advice. I would really highly recommend choosing an artwork after the Renaissance. So that's going to be like after the 1500s. That is a painting, a sculpture, or a drawing. It doesn't have to be, but that's going to be the easier ones. And if you can't find a lot about an artwork, if you can't find what the intention was, or just any details or facts, just don't choose that artwork. You don't have to choose an artwork that does not have the information that you need on it. But I do expect you to research and make sure that this is what I'm going to be researching, and this is, where I can find this information at before you turn this assignment in. Again, the project is really not that difficult, but if you don't have this outline to sort of follow, because it pretty much verbatim is the outline, you're really going to be struggling next week. So please make sure that you are keeping on top of everything, and that if you have any questions about what form, content, and the togetherness of form and content mean, that you reach out to me just as soon as possible, because it is, we've learned all this stuff in modules 1 through 3, and now we're starting to really apply that knowledge into, this type of assignment. So I understand how it can be kind of tricky, but, make sure that you make me aware that you're confused or you need clarification before, just jumping on into everything. But that is it for this week. I know it's a lot again, but, our 8-week class, it just doesn't really allow for a whole lot of wiggle room. So we've got our lessons 6 and 7, quiz 3, and then our time and motion assignment, and then our outline is all what is due this week. And if you have any concerns or questions, please do not hesitate. Let me know, and I can meet with you anytime this week to clear anything up.